Hi, and welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts. I'm Deborah Levine, your host and editor-in-chief of the American Diversity Report. And with me today is Eylene Pirez. She is a physicist and photographer. She focuses on science literacy and multidisciplinary education through exploration and world travel. Most recently, she has been working on a project called Access Chile, a docu-series tackling unique adventures in the name of science. Indeed, an unusual young woman. Welcome, Eylene.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here to talk about all your wonderful work in the science and exploration. First, tell us how you got involved in this.
Well, I recently finished my graduate program at UCLA in accelerator physics. And I mean, since I was a kid, I was driven to the outdoors. The outdoors have been my passion. I was climbing and mountaineering. Pretty much any time in my life where I haven't been working in a physics lab, I have been outside. And upon graduation, I knew that I wanted to do something different, mainly because I noticed that there was a huge disconnect between the science world and everything else. And oftentimes these worlds don't talk to science. And, we have a lot of pressing issues. But I think one of the biggest threats that we have as a society is science illiteracy. So I decided to do start sort of experimenting with new types of education and providing sort of free content for everyone. So I started partnering up with people and doing what I love to do, which is learning about the natural world by getting out there and going to these places, see the evidence myself, and be able to actually have that experience and connection. And I figured that was the best way to get people excited about science. And so, I started doing this project called Access Chile, and I picked topics that are unique, but there are places that people can go to and experience them themselves. So it's sort of like a guidance into science and adventure.
It sounds wonderful, amazing. And you are passionate about this planet and preserving it, making sure that people see it as beautiful as you do. Yes?
I think a lot of physicists, do, and the problem is a lot of scientists, we spend so much time on a desk, and even though we have a huge passion for how things work and we want to preserve them and we care about the planet, we often don't get to have the time to go outside. So I think bringing exploration back into science has been a really positive thing for me. And I'm extremely passionate. It's been very exciting to do this stuff. It's been just so much fun, and also I'm learning so much. So that's been sort of the interesting part, because I came in as an educator, and it turns out that the one that's learning the most, I think, is me.
Isn't it amazing how that works?
Yeah.
So as you go through this and you see these wonderful places, describe a few of them for us.
So one of my favorite, a lot of the stuff I do is also cultural, and culture has a lot to do with also science literacy, like how we run governments. How do we do, science literacy is not just knowing equations and doing math. It's pretty much being curious. And I think seeing different places from the eye of curiosity is the best lens you can have. And some of the best places that I've been to lately, I've just spent 3 months in the field in Chile, in which one of the places that I got to see was Aconcagua. I got to attempt, and I say attempt because I got very sick towards the end. I tried to do a solo climb of the Polish glacier on Aconcagua, which is 6,900 meters. Is almost, is a very tall peak. It's the tallest peak outside of the Himalayas. And I really wanted to experience this glacier. And 200 meters from the summit is this gorgeous ice field, and you have incredible wind just blowing up all the snow. And I mean, the landscapes are some of the most incredible places I've seen, and definitely need to be protected. Another place that I got to see was the world's driest desert, which is the Atacama. and they only get 15 millimeters of rainfall a year. So being in there and seeing how dry, but how it feels in your skin, like there's not enough water you can drink to feel hydrated, and the sky is just absolutely amazing. And then another place that I've just got to travel, I got to see a lot of the southern Patagonian ice field, which is, I think this was one of the hardest things to see, especially because of all the climate change, to be able to see that evidence firsthand. But it was incredible, just gorgeous fields of just ice in complete isolation. The earth is amazing. It's incredible.
You mentioned the effects of climate change here, and I gather that is something close to your heart, looking at that issue.
Yeah, let's not beat around the bush. Like, the world is a hostile place, right? We always have something that's going to threaten us, and to me, this is one of the biggest ones at this very moment. And the fact that we're so inactive still about it is worrisome, and we still have yearly reports that urge us to do all of these things, and very little is being done. And it's been political. The politics of it has become a huge part of it, but there's also like a lot of economics tied to it, and it's important to sort of start moving forward as a whole front, rather than just the environmentalists and scientists doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And you need everyone.
Right. And do you feel that your docu-series will be helpful in getting that message across?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring that. So the docuseries, we did the first 3 episodes, and the first 3 episodes are a little bit light on climate change. And one of the reasons I've noticed a lot of people tend to shy away from climate change is because it's a scary topic, and we're lecturing a lot, right? Every day I come out and I'm like, I'm yelling at people because of climate change, and it's not a good approach. It's something that we should be very inclusive, so it should never come out as like, you're destroying the world. So I'm trying to bring up more of a connection to nature that hopefully will inspire indirectly, just being more actively involved. And not just with climate change, with everything. So it's just pretty much just creating that attachment to the planet and sort of, create an emotional connection with it, which I think is what is missing. If you think about it, we're so disconnected from nature these days. Like, you step out of your house. I'm here in Los Angeles now. I step outside, I look up, I can't see the stars. You walk into a kid's bedroom and their idea of animals are stuffed bears and stuff like that. So we have a very large gap between the natural world and us, and just to try to bring that closer in a way that people may feel different.
And I assume that you're one of few women in your field. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, there's a lot more women now, and it's very exciting. What I can say about this is, in physics, we have less women than men. Women are the minority, but also in adventure and outdoor sports, women are a huge minority, maybe even worse than in physics. And in photography, women are also the minority. So I'm in sort of these 3 fields where I've always feel like a minority. And I kind of understood why recently, and I've thought about this a lot, and it's that for a very long period of time in this field, in these groups, there's only been room for 1 woman, right? So it's created competition even amongst women. So we don't have a really strong community when it comes to this particular 3 fields. I'm pretty sure it's universal in almost all fields, but where I see that a lot of women are not working together. But nowadays there's a lot more room for more women, and hopefully, instead of being our own competitors, we can be collaborators. And I'm hoping to see a lot more of that. For example, in professional surfing, women and men just got equalized pay. So there's progress coming in from different places, and I'm hoping to see a little bit more of that.
Well, I hope you're right. This is Women's History Month, and we want women to be inspired to move forward and to work together, which is not always the case. And I gather that you teach, so maybe you're teaching some women to follow in your footsteps, yes?
I used to teach. I'm not teaching now. I mean, my form of teaching at this point is doing the docuseries. It is very that's sort of why I wanted to switch. I wanted to stop teaching in the ways that we've been teaching science for a while, which hasn't changed in forever. We're still teaching the same way that we used to teach in the early 1900s. Here are equations, and this is really kind of what has brought down science literacy, is that we're no longer excited, right? You talk to people and ask them whenever I meet somebody who doesn't have a scientific background, I kind of want to see when did they fell off that, right? Like what makes them go away from science. And often it's like, oh, I had this high school teacher, it was boring, so it always comes down to like how you learn, how you were exposed to science. And I think that's what we have gotten wrong in education. And I hope that even though, of course, there is a very special place for academia and standard teaching, there has to be a little bit more of learning how to teach people so that they're excited and curious rather than just know a bunch of equations. And I think that's what's missing. And yeah, and when it comes to women, a lot of women reach out to me to ask me how to become an astrophysicist, like this, my bachelor's was in astrophysics, like how to get internships, and I try to point them in the right direction. It is difficult, especially women in international countries. I get a lot of messages from places like India, and yeah.
Well, I have to admit that I'm one of those women who started out in science in high school and switched. So I'm a poster child for that. But I have retained some of the interest rather sharply. And so one of the questions I have for you is, it was the physics that intimidated me and had me go elsewhere. What about physics attracted you?
I honestly, I think physics is the broadest of all the fields, because there's physics in everything, and physics tackles from the 1 second after the Big Bang to how do our eyes work. So it's a sort of like, how does everything work? And what I loved about physics is that it gave me, and physics classes are so boring, and I can honestly say that because I've taken too many of them. But physics gives you the critical thinking that you need to understand how things work. And I think that's more important than knowing anything else. And I think that's what excited me about physics, is that after taking several physics courses, I developed a different intuition about the world around me, and I think it allowed me to see the world at a deeper level. And I think that's really what got me. Even though the classes were really boring and the exams were hard, there was something else behind it. And I think it takes time and maybe a really positive mentor to show you that. And I fortunately since I was a kid, I have had I've had really good experiences in science, and I've had professors that have changed my life and pretty much guided me, have pretty much set out the path for me. So I've been privileged in that sense.
And that's how you ended up in astrophysics, is that correct?
Yeah, so I did my bachelor's in astrophysics. This is kind of I'm from Cuba, and in Cuba we don't have a lot of physics or stuff like that. And we obviously don't have a space program, but I read the book, The Little Prince.
Oh, yes.
And that book was like, I want to go to space. I want to see what these moons are about. Like, it just kind of created an interest for space, but I couldn't get that in Cuba. And I migrated to the US when I was 15. And I was like, I'm going to become an astronaut, and it started becoming that kind of thing. And then I got into school. I got into school for astrophysics, and I loved it. and yeah, never looked back.
Can you tell us what an accelerator physicist is? That's what you are now, right?
Yeah. So the thing about it's optics. It's all optics. You know, astronomy, when I was working in astrophysics, I was working with telescopes, and that's pretty much a camera for things that are really far away. And I was like, how do things in the smaller scale work? So an accelerator is practically a camera, is the eyeball of the particle level. And what we generally do is create, we work a lot with the generation of beams. So how to create electrons, how to speed them up closer to the speed of light, how to create better beams so we can have all these applications. It's pretty much is how do we allow the exploration of a particle scale? Like, how do we see it? How do we study it? So my expertise there was in RF structures, radio frequency structures. So pretty much what I worked on is how to get those electrons out, how to make a good beam for the accelerators. And these accelerators are huge facilities, and they're so useful and so important for medical devices, and also just so many technologies that people don't realize are in their lives depend on accelerator physics. So it was really exciting because it's a field that needs a lot of work still, right? We don't all have multi-billion dollars to build something like CERN. So to make other accelerators and little things in school and building a smaller particle, accelerator research facilities was kind of really exciting, because then you are giving people in all over the world the ability to do these experiments that are so important.
It seems like that is a little bit related to your being a photographer then.
Yep, as all imaging. I think, for a long time I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. When I was working in astronomy, I was working with Charles Townes, who's the Nobel Prize-winning physicist for the technology of the maser. And we were working on an experiment at the top of Mount Wilson, the observatory, and we were studying the composition of stars. But I realized that the way that we were learning about the world was because of these technologies. So I got more interested in pushing that technology forward, right? We have tons of scientists who can use this technology and do incredible things, but I was like, I want to work creating this pieces of imaging, and that's kind of become really interesting. I love optics, whether it's with a camera, whether it's an accelerator or a telescope. It all comes down to the same thing. It's just how do we see the world in a different way?
I love it. My goodness. And you've done all this and you're still relatively young lady, yes?
I'm 32. I'm getting there. I feel like I the Aconcagua mission was about 20 days, the expedition. And when I was there, I feel like I'm aging in dog years. The conditions are so hard. You feel much older whenever you come down the strips. But yeah, there's still a lot of life behind it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the future, because you have time to create and innovate the way you really dream of doing.
Yeah, it's been a shot in the dark, and there's been a lot of learning in the way. I went from having a very steady every day, and then also just to having no idea what I'm doing that day. I'm like, I'm just going to continue climbing this mountain and hopefully I'll learn something. So it's been a very different change of experimentation. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Well, if you had some words of advice to give young ladies or young people who have an interest in science, what would you say?
Maintain the curiosity. And oftentimes we see people who are curious and want to explore tend to be seen as perhaps childish or unstable, because they don't have a 9-to-5 or something like that. Just explore the best way you learn. Like, do the things because you believe in them. Have purpose. When you go outside, try to learn something every day. And definitely, if you're a scientist and you like science, just go outside. It's incredible how experiencing nature firsthand and seeing things firsthand really reinforces your drive towards science. I think that's one of the biggest things that we're missing in schools, is that we don't get to experience the subject nearly as much as we used to. So yeah, step outside, go see the sky, go see the mountains, go see the glaciers. It'll really give you a lot of purpose behind your studies.
Oh, thank you. I'm inspired. I personally grew up on an island, and nature and oceans were my thing. They shape you forever.
Yeah, they change you for life. Seeing something firsthand and caring for it really makes your studies much stronger.
Wow, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, follow along. At this point, we're trying to get funding for the next 3 episodes of Access Chile, which are going to be all glaciology, reintroduction of pumas, and very heavy on climate change and science policy. And hopefully we get the funding for this, because this will be very exciting. And it also gives you an insight on how the government works with scientists, and we definitely need the glaciers. So climate change is a big part of the next few episodes. So hopefully people can find us online and social media. We're heavy on that.
Excellent. Is there a website that you can direct people to?
Yeah, so our campaigns are generally posted in getaccess.co. But you can also follow, like, if you want to follow me directly, I have my Instagram is usually very active. I post videos of where I am every day and what my projects are. And I give a lot of insight on where educational materials you can go, and who to follow, and who's doing interesting stuff. And we have a couple of really interesting articles coming up, and they'll be redirected from there. So.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. This is just an amazing adventure in general that you're undertaking. And I hope you'll keep in touch and let us know how you're doing and what's going on.
Definitely. I'm heading back to Chile in April to do an expedition to install a laser beam, laser apparatus that's going to look at how quickly some of the glaciers are melting. So that's going to be an exciting expedition, and we can catch up at some point about that.
Oh, I'd love it. Thank you. Maybe we'll have you back when you return from your Chile April jaunt.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eylene. This has been a pleasure. And thank you, audience. Absolutely, for joining us. And we look forward to hearing more from Eylene as her adventures unfold. Thanks again.
Thank you.